Development Policy Institute, Pakistan-China Institute, under the auspice of Green CPEC Alliance that actually includes SDPI, PCI, and Dr. Christoph Nedopilwang from Fudan University will shortly be joining us as well. So on behalf of all the partner organizations, thank you so much everyone for joining us today. And perhaps just before we start the discussion, let me just set some of the housekeeping rules. The event is being live streamed on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. The speakers will be joining us online are encouraged to turn on their cameras while speaking, as long as their internet allows them to do so. The dialogue will be recorded and the video will be posted online, and everyone here, as well as all the participants, they're always welcome to revisit the discussions. And just after the panel discussion, we do invite some questions from all the audience and participants sitting over here as well, and also the ones who are joining us online. You can feel free to write them in the chat or the Q&A box that has already been present. So I think now coming towards the topic, I think today's theme, that is CPEC, is close to the heart of many of our speakers present today, including Dr. Hassan Daud Bhatt, Mr. Wang, Mr. Nagmana Hashmi, Mustafa, as well as Moin Saab, and a lot of other experts we have in this room. So I think this is a wonderful opportunity where we can actually discuss what needs to happen as we move ahead with CPEC, and in fact, not just a CPEC, but going beyond CPEC to ensure how we can actually have very strong collaborations between the private sector in both of the countries as well. So I think with any further ado, today's session is being chaired by Dr. Hassan Daud Bhatt. Dr. Hassan is currently working as a senior advisor and research fellow at SDPI. He's also a faculty of Bahia University. He's a former CEO of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa Board of Investment and Trade and the director CPEC Administrative Planning.
He's also honorary fellow at Pakistan-China Institute.
Oh, okay. This is good as well. Okay, so with this, yes, Dr. Hassan, over to you. Thank you.
I'm Ambassador Nagmana Hashmi, my friend Mustafa, Mr. Wang, colleagues, friends, fellow scholars, ni hao, good morning. It's always a pleasure to speak about investment and opportunities, and perhaps creating a way forward in this amidst the global and domestic challenges for something that we all should work for, especially my generation, which has lots to do for creating opportunities for some of the youngsters who are sitting in the aisles. And for that, we need to understand the opportunities that are lying very close to us. So while doing my research on this, and also during my recent interaction with some of the Chinese enterprises, I think we need to understand how China is exploring their options of putting their FDI outside China. So if you look at the overall numbers, I think in the first quarter, and this is the report in April this year by Chinese MOFCOM, the overall investment in year-to-year investment by Chinese in BRI country has increased by 9.5%. And overall in the construction sector, this increase is about 26%. And in the energy sector, the increase is around 15 to 20% roughly, depending on which sector you're talking about. This number apparently looks lower based on each 5-year plan, because the 13 5-year plan spoke about 740 billion of Chinese investment, and that included non-BRI countries also. But this time, their overall target till 2026 is about 550 billion. 2025 is 550 billion, which perhaps from the earlier 5-year plan looks lower. But in the current economic situation, this is huge. And this is great opportunity for us, especially for a country which is in transition for various reasons. We're not just in transition politically, because sometimes our discussions are overwhelmed by political debate and discussion, but overall in our way of life, we are in transition. And when we say a way of life, it also means the accessibility of energy and the usage of energy. And when I say accessibility of energy, I also mean it in a sense that for now, and I've been saying this, but even at the cost of repetition, I say that this is not a matter of government, but it is a matter of human right for people to have cleaner, cheaper form of energy. And that will actually help us get more opportunities for jobs and industrialization in our country, which we so importantly need, especially for our special economic zone within CPEC, because we have special economic zone, but then the cost of energy is too high, and also the transition of energy is recently Pakistan has actually agreed on the 300 megawatt project in Gwadar. But perhaps on the Chinese side, projects under coal may not happen anymore. So perhaps in the overall larger context of Chinese investment, this may be their last coal-fired project, unless there's some new technology that comes in. And I can tell you, China is working on several new initiatives around new energy transition. I also believe that this is an opportunity for many financial institutions, including ADB, AIIB, and World Bank, to explore options for working with Chinese financial institutions, although AIIB major stakeholder is China. But I think Asian Development Bank, World Bank, and even framework within SCO and BRICS can work in helping us and helping developing countries make this step forward and navigate in these difficult times. I also believe that now that the Chinese restrictions of movement and probably flow of energy and wealth are lifted in terms of COVID-19, I hope and see more Chinese investors coming to Pakistan. I also work closely with Energy China as one of their advisors. So I can tell you for sure that Chinese in the next 1 year will come to Pakistan, will explore options and support Pakistan's transition towards greener, cheaper energy. But having said that, we also need to realize some of the headwinds that we have. We need to, and we've been saying this, and I know Mustafa will echo this more unequivocally, but I think overall we need to work on creating a true sustainable ease of doing business. Because in the last 13 years that I've worked on with China and on China, I've seen several investors in the energy sector, especially in new forms of energy, coming to Pakistan, exploring their options, doing their feasibilities by Pakistanis, but then based on our capacity. And when I say our capacity, I also mean the politicians, the bureaucracy, and also all the stakeholders and technocrats like us for our capacity to understand some of the new ideas. I remember, and Mustafa, when he'll speak, he will also echo what I'm going to say. When we were working on third project in 2013, I still remember the kind of voices that we heard, not just for the environmental reason, but also the quality of coal. People sometime here, and I heard this in the mining conference also, sometimes we based our discussion and assumptions not on tangible data, but on hearsay. And this is where the role of SDPI is so critical and also Pak China Institute and scholars and even the Chinese embassy is so critical to support discussion like this, Mr. Wang, so that true data can flow. I've just given you a few numbers that I know, and the number is much bigger. The scope of Chinese investment, not just in energy, but in healthcare, in transportation, in road infrastructure, in optical fiber, from sub-Sahara Africa to Laos, where they're building such a magnificent railway. I was with some Laos colleagues just recently on discussion on their railway. Such brilliant work is happening. And I expect that in future, ML1 is going to be on ground very soon. And I also believe that the energy sources for ML1 railway project will be green and will be some new form of energy. So with this, I want to thank all my colleagues and seniors here, and also want to thank each one of you. I also encourage you to ask questions, both who are online and offline, because this is about our future. This is about our future generation. You know, as we say, and also this discussion, I heard this first time while listening to some of the speeches in Davos. We do not have a planet B as we speak. We might have it in 100 years, but at least on my time on this planet, we do not have a planet B option. So since we do not have that option, we should make this planet greater, cleaner, safer, and secure. I also would like to really acknowledge the work of Chinese government, especially in their work around GDI, which is, again, besides BRI, a great hope for scholars like us who are working on sustainability. So in terms of sustainability, I think the West should also look at how GDI can support SDGs, Vision 2030, because it is actually contributing to this. And if I just can give one number before I end, the global poverty number have just gone down because of Chinese contribution of removing more than 800 million people in the poverty line and taking them above the poverty line. And if China, through their global development initiative, through the support of investment in BRI, can help countries, developing countries like us, like Laos, like probably even ASEAN countries in ASEAN in making this energy transition, I think I see a very prosperous, very happy, very green, and very clean future for Pakistan. So thank you again. And Ubaid, it's to you.
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Hassan. I think you very rightly pointed out how CPEC has already played a very important role, and definitely the initiatives such as GDI, they're actually going to hopefully contribute a lot. Now, at the same time, Pakistan as a country has also has to ensure that any development plans that actually goes forward with are actually aligned with Pakistan's nationally determined contributions. We need to have Paris-aligned agreement, PA-aligned agreement pathways as well. So basically, where Pakistan is actually one of the countries that is very highly vulnerable to climate change. While it has historically been a low emitter, but if you look at the portfolio of Pakistan's power sector, the emissions has actually increased over the past few years. And given the rapid expansion of the coal field in Pakistan as well. And I think this, similar to Pakistan, China has also observed some increased vulnerability on the climate end as well, mandating sort of a top-down approach to transition from a carbon-intensive economy towards peaking of emissions by 2030, and also the announcement of the net zero by 2040. So as such, spending of renewables has also reached some very new heights in China as well, averaging nearly almost 250 billion annually from 2021 to 2023. And I think the commitment which China has actually shown for the renewable energy are also amplified by the announcement of the President Xi that which has actually reiterated the commitment by announcing a coal moratorium on the overseas investments as well. So I believe that the green developments and green buildup are actually a very common or mutual aspiration of both of the countries. But now again, bringing everything back towards transforming the power sector, let's just take a step back and look at some of the figures. If we, as of now, look at the power sector of Pakistan, it currently has very high secular debt, approximately 9.4 billion, of which almost 1.5 billion was added just in the past year. The payables to independent power producers, IPPs, have also increased. And if we look at Pakistan's capacity expansion plan, then we do need around 52 billion between 2022 to 2031 just for the installation of new capacity. And this does not even include the transmission and distribution. Taking this whole game to the CPEC, almost 6,600 megawatt of capacity has been added under the CPEC, and that has actually contributed very positively to the power sector of Pakistan. Now, again, given that a good portion, almost 30% of financing under the CPEC is in the form of the soft loans, the component of debt financing for coal-based project at the same time has also raised some risk of these plants actually becoming some sort of stranded asset in the longer term in case. So again, there is a whole economic case of transitioning to cleaner and more sustainable energy resources in terms of debt sustainability, getting returns of investment, the green job opportunities are there, and thus reducing this dependency on the fossil fuels as well. So to address this transition cost, financing mechanisms are required that can provide low-cost financing for clean energy projects, promote investment grade. And for this, I'll be directly going towards the keynote of Dr. Christoph. on green and just energy transition in CPEC, financing mechanisms for China to drive a coal transition in Pakistan. So Dr. Christoph is currently the director of Green Finance and Development Center at FISF Fudan University, and he has over 16 years of experience working in sustainability, finance, and innovation in academia, the private and the public sector of 4 different countries. And he has also established 2 leading research centers on green finance in Beijing and Shanghai. And so, yes, Dr. Christoph, I hope we're audible. So yes, over to you. You can share. Hamza, if you can just allow him to share the screen, please.
All right. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I hope everybody's doing well. Very good to see such a esteemed crowd. Thanks so much for the invitation and the opportunity to speak on kind of the green and just transition in CPAC. I wish I would be with you. I've been to Pakistan a couple of times and always been very, very fascinated by the wonderful people, the beautiful countryside, and of course, the rapid development that Pakistan is undergoing. So very pleased at least to be here with you online. I'm right now trying to share my screen. Hope that works.
Yes, it's coming up. Yeah, it's visible. If you could just share the slide screens, yes.
Wonderful. There you go. Yeah, I would like to talk about the green and just transition in CPAC, and this is work and presentation based on very, very recent research that we just concluded, and I will introduce a little bit more about this consortium and also the work that we've been doing. And thanks also for the introduction. Yes, I'm currently actually in Munich at the airport, but I am an associate professor at Fudan University in Shanghai, and I'm also leading the Green Finance and Development Center. And there we work with particularly the Chinese government, the Belt and Road Initiative coalition, the Chinese financial institutions and developers, and of course also on an international scale with a number of partners in order to really green the Belt and Road Initiative to bring investments to accelerate the green transition. Here's a kind of a quick slide to understand. I mean, we talk often about kind of the energy, and particularly when we talk about energy for a long time, we've been talking a lot about coal investments. But what we're seeing here is that China has been a important supporter of global coal development, and particularly in the Belt and Road Initiative. And particularly a couple of countries received the staggering amount of coal investment from China. That includes Indonesia, Pakistan, Vietnam, South Africa, and Russia. But what we're seeing on the right side is kind of this different types of energy investments over the last 10 years. And the first couple of years, kind of these gray bars at the bottom were actually quite big, which is the coal, and then there was also a lot of gas. And the green bar at the top, which is the solar and wind, has been less prominent. Now this is luckily changing, particularly on the coal aspect. If we talk about green development, the coal aspect with 2020 with the announcement of the 2021 with the announcement of the coal exit, but also 2023. I didn't include that there, but we brought out the data last week. 2023, the first half, was the greenest on track record of the 10 years of the BRI. China has also been very kind of advancing its policies more broadly on environment. You see kind of some of the guidelines on top, where the red lines signify that it's a host country principle on environmental regulations. That means that even in countries that have weaker regulations, that's fine to follow the rules. But the green bars, and this is 2021 starting, means that China is trying to apply international environmental standards, similar to Equator Principle financial institutions. That means that even in countries that don't have necessarily the capacity to apply strong green standards, China is nevertheless trying to apply those. So there's interesting progress. Now, looking at Pakistan, I don't have to tell you about Pakistan. Who am I to talk about Pakistan in front of such a kind of knowledgeable crowd? But what's interesting from a China and CPEC perspective is that China has, of course, been instrumental in expanding the coal capacity in Pakistan. So Pakistan overall had very little coal capacity in 2015, and now really ramped it up to over 7 gigawatts. And China backed about 90% of Pakistan's coal capacity. Now that is important for us to understand that if we want to talk about kind of a green transition and also kind of the ambitions that includes also Pakistan to reduce coal reliance, that we have to deal with China and kind of have to find solutions that include China. Clearly, one of the challenges for Pakistan is the import of coal, or the import dependency on coal. The expansion of domestic coal, I think, is a goal, but it seems not without technical challenges as well. And of course, environmental challenges. And then Pakistan has, of course, kind of more than peak capacity and installed capacity, but we have to also understand that there's still power poverty, energy poverty in Pakistan. So there is, of course, kind of both this high supply of coal and coal power in some regions, but then there's also energy poverty. So we have to kind of also balance this. This is kind of also something that we have to understand when we talk with our partners. So also very happy if you can provide any feedback to kind of our research and kind of, but this is of course based with discussions with numerous Pakistan experts. So this is kind of the background that kind of we started with, and what we try to do is to understand how can we accelerate the green energy expansion and potentially also the retirement of coal, because again, coal is the issue is it's not necessarily a cheaper source of electricity. It is of course reliable, but it's not necessarily a cheaper source. But there are of course a lot of issues when saying we have to see how we can retire early. And retire early, it's important, doesn't mean retire now. So don't want any panic in the room. What we're saying is kind of how can we retire maybe 10 years, 15 years before the end of the life cycle. We understand that the power plants are very young in Pakistan, as I just showed, but how can we retire maybe not after 40 years, but maybe after 25 years, so in order to reduce CO2 emissions. And so we kind of brought together a consortium of a number of partners with Climate Smart Ventures that also worked quite a bit in Pakistan, but originally come from Singapore, the Center for Sustainable Finance at Source University of London, Renewables First, which is, I guess, maybe also in the room, the Pakistani organization, and the Institute for Energy Economics and Financial Analysis, which is also located in Pakistan. So we try to understand kind of what is the political economy, what are kind of some of the issues on a political scale, but what are also, and this is kind of particularly exciting, what are the economic values of the coal-fired power plants vis-a-vis new financing options if we retire them early. So can we retire them early and nevertheless provide more financial value for the investors? So we try to kind of look at the top down, the kind of the political economy, and the asset level and plant by plant analysis. And this is quite unique. And I think luckily we also come to really interesting results, and I hope you'll find them interesting as well. And these results were just published actually last week. So you are the first people that I publicly share those with. We had 2 closed-door workshops so far. So it's overall kind of to paint the overall pictures. Globally, there is this massive development to understand what are options to retire coal plants early. And particularly also in Asia. So this is not just kind of sometimes we believe in the Western world, but of course, I mean, Pakistan, is in the middle of it, and with the ADB Energy Transition Mechanism, the ETM, Pakistan has signed up for it, but Vietnam has its JETP, Indonesia has its JETP. there is the new GFANZ and the Glasgow Financial Alliance for Net Zero, kind of brought together a lot of Asian stakeholders from the finance, from the policy, to develop the GFANZ transition handbook. The ASEAN taxonomy, also developed in ASEAN, kind of not from Western, has a traffic light system in order to finance retirement of coal plants. So there's a lot of work going on globally to understand how can we accelerate the retirement of coal plants and expand the renewables. So this is kind of just a overview of what's going on in the world, and there's just a lot going on. And so what we then did in Pakistan is kind of, as I said, the first step is to understand what are some of the political economy barriers to that kind of stop us, kind of give us a barrier for retirement of coal plants, and what are some of the enablers. And we kind of, as an overarching kind of finding is, even though the cost of generation and tariffs are already more economically than coal, so green energy is often more economically than coal, the expansion of solar and wind has been limited in Pakistan. And we kind of also, I'm pretty sure that non-economic factors play an important role in the decision-making factor. And this is not to talk about just transition. There are other non-economic factors. And these are, of course, also vested interest in the current energy system. There is this kind of strong belief in energy security that we might not have with solar, particularly with the intermittence of solar and wind. There is resource nationalism that kind of are all kind of factors that we have to understand if we want to accelerate the green energy transition. It's not just an economic decision, but there are many other factors that kind of provide barriers for this. At the same time, we also find a number of enablers that can kind of, that we should support, kind of that we should lever in order to accelerate the energy transition. For example, the project returns seem to be better in renewable energy, so kind of the economic factors. Then we also, of course, understand the circular debt issue and kind of the reliance on imported coal, which kind of I think are kind of should be an enabler in some ways for the green energy transition, because suddenly or over kind of the medium run, we are really reducing the reliance of imported coal. And there's a number of supporters as well, the project owners, the project finances, the local communities that might benefit from renewables expansion, particularly also if it's distributed. So there's a whole report out there where we really kind of dive deep into this question with our Pakistani partners as well. So very interesting that there is kind of a lot of opportunities, but also a lot of challenges. Even more interesting potentially is if when we try to understand what is the economic value of the existing coal plants. And we looked at 3 coal plants in Pakistan, 3 coal plants in Vietnam. I'm only showing, of course, the Pakistan examples. And kind of we looked at different coal plants and we're going to try to understand kind of what are the criteria of coal plants that we want to look at. We kind of then said we have the criteria for the choices that we made. So less efficient technology, mostly use generating less than 1,000 megawatts in order to kind of to not have such a massive impact on the energy on the power grid, and a mix of different plant age brackets. So kind of these are kind of the power plants that we looked at to find out the economic value of retirement. And here kind of you see on number 2, the plant selections. So in Pakistan, we have the Engro tar, the SSRL tar, the Sahiwal, and CFPP is coal-fired power plant. Then we kind of developed a financial model to really kind of understand what are the current costs, the current debt and equity ratios, the PPAs. So we identified a lot of data, and for Pakistan, it was luckily not as difficult as for Vietnam. Pakistan is way more transparent than some other countries. And then we did a macro scenario development. What is the future looking like? So business as usual, choosing your allies. Choosing your allies is kind of, the world is breaking up a little bit into blocks, the BRICS bloc, and the G7. And so kind of this is a future scenario, or the Ministry of the Future. We all work together to address the climate crisis and install carbon prices and so on. So kind of, we develop different future scenarios. And then we applied different financing mechanisms, and I will show you two of them in a second. And then I will also give you the results. So two important financing mechanisms that have been discussed widely and have been applied already. So coal retirement is not just a theoretical construct, it has been applied even without concessional financing. There is a case in Indonesia, I mean, Germany and the US have a lot of coal retirement, but there has been a case in Asia as well. Where really kind of, it was a financial structure to allow for early coal retirement. There was the Asian coal-fired power plant in Indonesia. And what they did, the two major options are, on the left side, the refinancing mechanism. The refinancing mechanism is in principle very simple. The existing debt is being refinanced with cheaper debt because it's cheaper for two reasons. Number one, the commercial capital providers are seeing that there is a green element in it, and green often can mean cheaper financing. So it's harder to find coal financing. It's easier and cheaper to find green financing. So the private capital providers can provide a lower capital cost. And then you have a second aspect, the credit enhancement through development finance institutions. And this overall makes the debt concessional and therefore cheaper. And the cheaper debt comes against the promise of retiring early. So that's the first option, kind of, it's a basic refinancing mechanism. The second option is then usually with kind of a simultaneous expansion of renewables. So we create a managed transition vehicle, an MTV, that collects money, again, similar from concessional debt, private debt, maybe even some donors, some of the old capital providers of the coal-fired power plant. And that's blended, and therefore, of course, it's concessional finance in the end. And with that money, the managed transition vehicle similarly buys out the coal asset, so it kind of moves to the managed transition vehicle, and against the promise, of course, of retiring early, and with the additional capital that it was able to collect, it invests in renewables in the next couple of years. And kind of these are two basic financing options that have been applied and that are really kind of making a lot of sense. And I'm happy to also, of course, share more about this. But I want to show the results for the 3 coal plants in Pakistan. So you have on the left side the SSRL, the Engro tar, and then the Sayawal. And then I want you to have to look at the 3 lower bars. These are the enterprise values. So if then kind of we have, for each of them, we have different scenarios, the business as usual, the allies, and the future. So it's a lot of data to digest, but I just want you to look now, for example, at the enterprise value of the SSRL at Bauer. So it's kind of this one here. So the green bar, the $2.19 billion is the current value of the SSRL power plant under the current PPA. So about $2.2 billion. Now, kind of what we do in the first one is kind of the asset refinancing. So just the light blue one is just the refinancing with cheaper debt because we retire early. And what we find is that the asset value, the enterprise value of the SSRL power plant increases. So we retire early, we retire 8 years early in this case, and nevertheless, the economic value increases. And that is because the debt is so much cheaper. So we significantly by 25% increase the value of the asset by retiring early and refinancing. Now, if we combine that again with a renewable expansion at the same time, so kind of we generate revenues from renewables kind of and have this phase down and phase up, sunset and sunrise of coal and renewables, we increase our enterprise value to $4.2 billion. And that is kind of true for all of the 3 different power plants, that if we refinance and retire early, we generate value, and if we refinance retire early and invest in renewables, we actually really significantly expand the enterprise value of the asset. And this is absolutely exciting. This is absolutely interesting findings, because that allows us, just from an economic perspective, to also highlight what is possible in early retirement. And I want to close, and also just looking at the time, sorry for taking a little bit longer, what it means also for China and kind of in cooperation with Pakistan. So one of the interesting things is that a lot of the Chinese enterprises are state-owned enterprises. A lot of the financing comes from state-owned financial institutions in China. And they can reap some of the benefits of this early, the accelerated retirement, the accelerated sunset, and sunrise of renewables. They can reap some of the benefits. So that's very, very important. The Chinese financial institutions can provide credit enhancement mechanisms, and that would potentially be beneficial, of course, to Pakistan and other BRI countries, but it would also be beneficial for the current owners of the power plants, because particularly in Pakistan, there's also a lot of unpaid debt for these power plant owners, and therefore kind of providing some financing mechanisms to allow them to get out is actually beneficial. There are some other recommendations, but for Pakistan specifically, Chinese SOEs and investors can evaluate the utilization also of innovative debt for climate swaps to really write down some of the debt that would allow Pakistan to reduce the debt burden and the financing cost for green energy transition. So debt for climate or debt for renewable swaps really could be an interesting option in the negotiation between Pakistan and China. And of course, one of the really strong advantages for Pakistan is this exceptionally good relationship definitely on a political level, but of course also on a people-to-people level between China and Pakistan through CPEC. And then what's beautiful, Pakistan and China have agreed on greening CPEC. So green CPEC, SDPI and us have been working on the Green CPEC Alliance for the last 18 months, and that was launched. There's a lot of momentum also in this. So the idea of green CPEC was to green CPEC, but then also scale it to other BRI countries. And I think this continues to be a great opportunity for Pakistan, China, and of course, the rest of the Global South. And with that, I want to close with what our colleague said before. There is no planet B. And again, thank you very much for your attention and for the invitation to speak.
Thank you so much, Dr. Christoph. This was extremely insightful. I think a lot of, I'm sure everyone do have some questions. So I think perhaps before going to the panel discussion, if I could actually request if any of our esteemed speakers do have any comments or any questions that they actually want from Dr. Christoph, or anything perhaps they would actually like to highlight at this point before we actually go towards. Yes, Mustafa, please.
Yeah, I think my friend Christoph has made very important points. And I think that it would be interesting to look at the transition that has taken place, which you said in Indonesia, Germany, and the United States, particularly Indonesia, because it's in Asia and it is a key Belt and Road country. And in fact, one of the top destinations today of Chinese enterprises that are choosing to go outbound, go out. Indonesia is on now in the top 3 countries where they're choosing at this point. So I think it'd be very interesting to see how they have gone from in the coal retirement process, because I do feel that there is a lot of discussion, Christoph, and we've been and we have policymakers and different stakeholders talk about this, but actually the means and ways, the specific steps, if you will, to undertake to do this transition is something that is still not completely explored in Pakistan. And particularly, I would also advise that it's very important to, when we have these dialogues, it's very important to have the enterprises in the room because they are the investors. And I think, Christoph, you also made an important point that the renewable investments, even though if you retire the coal power plants and you transition to renewable, it is very profitable for the investors. And it's very opportune commercially. I think we need to substantiate that. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. Yes, please, Dr. Christoph.
No, I kind of, Mustafa, I totally agree with you as always. And of course, there's a lot of capacity building work that needs to be done, both in terms of the mechanisms, how do we actually implement such a kind of early retirement and kind of coal phase down and renewable scale up from a kind of financial mechanisms point of view. But then there's also the capacity building of even understanding that this is possible. And that there is this opportunity that probably we didn't have as much before, because there's such a willingness also from investors, a broader willingness from investors to support green over brown projects and what it means on a financial perspective. And so absolutely agree. And I think there's a lot of work that can be done. And I would be very pleased to continue, of course, to support the work and the collaboration with both, of course, PCI and SDPI and other partners.
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Christoph. I think with this, we do have very sufficient evidence present with which we can actually move towards the esteemed panel as well. So we have been joined by Ambassador Lupana Hashmi. She's a former ambassador of Pakistan to China, and she has an enriched experience of over 37 years with deep understanding of regional and international affairs and the changing geostrategic, geopolitical, and geoeconomic situation of the world. She's also currently working as an advisor at Castrol Trading. We have also been joined by Mr. Wang, who's currently working as the head of political section, CPAC focal person at the Embassy of People's Republic of China in Islamabad. We have Mr. Mustafa Sayyid Haider with us, who's the executive director of Pakistan-China Institute, has also previously worked it's a researcher at Woodrow Wilson Center, who is one of the two researchers who assisted Dr. Maliha Lodi with one of the great books, Pakistan Beyond the Crisis State. We have Mr. Muin Abbas with us, who's currently working as the CEO of Muni Holdings, and that's actually one of the largest private held equity fund in the country. We also have Dr. Khalid Waliz, who is an energy economist and is working as a research fellow at SDPI. And just recently, we've also been joined by Ms. Yang, who is the director of the China Study Center at NUS. So again, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. So I think once we actually just start with the panel, I think it's also good before we actually go deep down into understanding some of the very power sector challenges and then trying to link it with the Chinese JETPs. Perhaps we can initially start with Mr. Wang. Mr. Wang, if you could just sort of highlight how China is actually driving the whole just energy transition narrative, and how do you actually see this whole theme of just energy transition prospects under CPEC playing a very important role? Yes, over to you. And along with any other points that you would actually like to highlight at this portfolio.
First of all, thanks for inviting me to attend this event, and thanks to SDPI for initiating this function. And Excellency Ambassador Hashmi, Dr. Hassan Dawood, and my friend Mustafa, and your friend Muin Abbas, as well as Khalid Wali and Shang Yang. Just really pronunciation. Well, the purpose actually for me is first to listen and learn. Okay. I have to admit I'm no expert in this field, but somehow due to the post as the director of the political section and as well as the focal person for CPAC, it gave me a very good chance to get to learn about the energy sector and also start to have interactions with Chinese investors related with the coal sector and also other industries related with the energy part. So it helped me a lot to learn those technical parts, I have to say, which just enhance my capability to share my knowledge on this topic. And as well as being the diplomat, it also gives me another advantage that I can think of this topic in overall capacity. That is not necessarily to be very limited to the energy sector only, but also to think about the holistic view as how to understand the energy part, the CPAC cooperation, as well as what we talk about a lot is the green transition. So that's why I'm thinking that I should firstly just try to explore today's theme. As what we read, it is the exploring the prospect of China-Pakistan just energy transition partnership. For myself, I can understand most of them, and but the most curious part is about the keyword "just."
Yes.
So, what does this "just" indicate? So, this is something that I'm so curious about, and actually, I would like to listen to more elaborations on this. But somehow, you give me the chance to speak first, so I would just share some of my understanding about this "just." So first of all, I would assume that we should have some words or elaborations on the just understanding of CPAC. And actually, people would get to know CPAC mostly on the energy part will directly linked with coal-fired power plants. But somehow, I would say the CPAC energy sector, the projects, we have 4 wind farms on the CPAC framework, as well as 1 solar panel park. And besides, we also have 4 hydropowers also being constructed or already being finished under this CPAC framework. And the rest are the coal-fired power plants. And in a composition, actually the CPAC energy sector, it now consists about 1/4 of the installed capacity of Pakistan's national power generation. And at peak times, it also serves to supply 1/3 of the national demand for the power. So I would say that no one would deny the positive role played by the CPAC power projects overall. And the second, I would say, is to have some just understanding on coal-fired power plants.
Okay.
Nowadays people tend to easily track something, and somehow when it comes to the CPAC projects, actually it just enjoy the most advanced technology, what we call the supercritical technology, which means it will largely increase the efficiency of the consumption and also reduce largely to the carbon emission. So this technology makes the CPAC coal-fired power plants no longer as what we have those stereotypes. The pictures of those polluted, heavily just with so much smog, and those kind of the power plants. And recently, we just had the chance to invite some of the journalists in Lahore to visit Sahiwal power plant. And most of them all astonished to see how advanced and how beautiful and how clean this power plant would be. It is that already beyond their imaginations. And secondly, when it comes to the coal-fired power plants, it just produce the electricity at a very low cost. So before the Ukraine crisis, as we know, I have a figure, this has been done during my homework, that for the old IPPs, that mainly consumed by the oil and the gas or LNGs, these power plants, the purchase power, the tariff rate is more than 25, near 25% rupee. And for the end consumer, the purchase rate is near 16 rupee. But when it comes to the CPAP power plants, it is under 15. So which means these coal-fired power plants, actually, they have provided with the most reliable and stable supply of power with the most advanced technology in term, as well as at the lowest rate of the tariff. So actually, it is doing the contributions to first address the load shedding of the country and also to reduce the burden of the increase of what we have already mentioned, the circular debt, which later I will elaborate more on this topic. So give a just understanding to the coal-fired power plants is also very important thing, because according to China's development experience, one lesson or one key to the success, I would say, is always take a very scientific and moderate policy, which is adaptable to the real and current situation of the national condition. So when it is come to Pakistan, actually, I think most of the challenges or the hurdles that are confronting to this country, China has already all experienced. So that's why I think being a very ironclad friend to Pakistan, China should have also played its part to give and or serve as a good reference for Pakistan when it is doing or designing its policy related with the energy policies. So then it is come to the just understanding, I would say, or maybe take it to that way. It is just the moment, which means it is the time. It is time to think it over and to draw some lessons from the previous experience, and mostly also to take an overview as what we call, what we can do on the green transition part. As we can all understand, after the Ukraine crisis, the price of the energy just all goes soaring up. And somehow India has increased, or actually doubled, its import of coal from Russia. So when we talk about the retirement of the coal, well, somehow the other country is doing some reserves for the future plans. So why they make this kind of decisions? It is through the very, somehow the thorough calculations as what will happen in the next phase. Of course, we have to just increase the portion of the green energy, which is the trend. And somehow, as I have already said, that it can be done in a very moderate and gradual way. So then it comes to another understanding of the just. That is we have a just understanding about Pakistan's real situation on the energy sector. For this part, I also have done some homework. So, but this I have to refer to my notes. After my study, I think I found that Pakistan, the consumption of the electricity, actually for the citizens, for the normal lives, they consist almost half of the percentage of the consumption, 49%. While the industry, actually for most developed countries, the industry part is assumed to play the major role as for the consumption. But somehow in Pakistan, it is only 26%, 1/4 of the energy consumption. And agriculture, less than 10%, 9% only. And for the commercial and business, 7.4%. And also Pakistan rely a lot on imported oil and gas, which all consist around 1/3 of the of the whole portion. So given this kind of picture, what conclusion we can draw from this list of figures? That is, I would say, actually Pakistan enjoy a huge potential to even develop further on its generation part of the energy. So sometimes people would say, we have already met our demand and there's no need to actually promote or add more projects related with the energy part. Somehow it is not that correct because it neglects one important factor. That is, Pakistan should enjoy a more speedy growth of the economy. So with the development of the economy, of course, in particular, the industrial part, of course, it will enhance greatly about the demand of the supply. So now the question to Pakistan is no longer the supply exceeds the demand, but somehow I would put it to keep a balance between scientific and reasonable design of the energy sector between to keep steady growth of the economy that will be guaranteed by the enough sufficient supply of the power. So this would be the fundamental question that faces the Pakistan side. So somehow it moves to the next understanding of the just of my kind of the remarks. That is, I would change it to another way, not the just, but to make it adjust. We have to do some adjustment to the policy, adjustment to some of the the initiatives or the designs of the next phase development. So for this part, I would start firstly to mention about the circular debt, because Christopher talked about the financing of the green energy, but I would say the fundamental basis to talk about financing is to have more investment. Once there is no investment, no inflow of the money, no interest to invest this energy sector of Pakistan, financing, well, it's groundless. So I think to address the cause of circular debt is the fundamental thing. It not only ease the burden of Pakistan's government, Pakistan's consumers, but also will enhance the confidence for the potential investors to invest in the energy sector, not necessarily for the fossil power plants, but also for the green energy. So this is the thing I would like us to raise. And for this part, actually, with the help of Chinese companies, there was a study. I think it will be very interesting, and I'm very glad to share with all of you. That is by taking some kind of comprehensive methods or ways we can address these problems at its root cause. First, if we can upgrade the metering and the billing system of the country, it can reduce, you can write down the number, the figure, 350 billion rupee, only by doing this, which means composite 65% of the increase of the circular debt flow in the year of 2020. If we can timely adjust the tariff, it will reduce the increase of the circular debt by 125 billion rupee, means 23.5% of the increase. If we can transfer the circular debt to public debt, because different ratios, comparisons, it will reduce 114 billion rupee, means 21% of the increase. if we can buy out or gradually phase out of those old IPPs, the IPPs used the LNG, used the gas with the least advanced technology, and actually most of them are no longer functioning, but still enjoy high rate of capacity payment, which means they sit idle but get payment from the government. So these are the real components for the inflow of the circular debt. By doing so, it can reduce 108 billion rupee, means 20% of the circular debt. If we can build up more backbone transmission lines, like Material line,
Yes.
it is also on the framework of the CPEC. If we can have such backbone transition lines, then it will reduce 75 billion, which means indicates 40%. Because you know the line loss here in Pakistan, 18%. 18%. When it comes to the nationwide, we can calculate how much we can improve if we just upgrade this national grid. And one last but not least method suggested is to also to upgrade the distribution system, because the power theft or not pay the tariffs by the end consumers, it also happens here. So it will also reduce 45 billion rupees, in the case like 8.6% of the circular debt. So this will be quite useful, according to my personal understandings, to address this circular debt. And when it comes to the green transition part, somehow I also have some kind of inspirations from the Chinese companies. They have proposed a very professional and comprehensive idea as how to proceed this in Pakistan. And what they, so before that, last night, I have read through 81 page of the PPT. And so it is, and also to write down some of the notes. I personally think it will also works. And so that's why I'm just sharing with all of you. For Pakistan, in principle, the idea to do the green transition is to have minimum input that will exert maximum impact. Because unlike the developed countries, we have that abundant money to spend. So we have to be very realistic to make every penny paid count. So that's why we have to give some kind of the reforms, or at least some transitions, what we call, at both ends. One is at the supply side. Another is at the demand side. So for the supply side, we should do a structured plan. First is to have the intelligence transition for the national grid, which can serve to meet the large-scale access and also the safe application of the new energy. So this is part for the national grid upgradation through the intelligence part. Second, to deal with unsustainability of those new energy, like the wind farms, the solar, it depends too much for the climate things. We still need to have those coal-fired power plants, as well as the nuclear power plants, to serve as the basic load for the country for a time being in the foreseeable future. This is very realistic. So we should have our visions, and we should also have our foot on the ground. So I think this suggestion is, the main purpose is to ensure that we have a stable national grid and also high quality of the generation of the power. And the third is to actively promote the garbage power and also biomass power, You know, Pakistan, we produce a lot of daily garbage of the waste, and somehow most of them are just being kind of the pollution source instead of as the source for the energy. But somehow we introduce some already very mature energy from China or whatever else in the world. We can do a lot to change this phenomenon. So this is on the supply side, the structural plan. Second is demand side. As I said, we have to promote industrialization of the country. Only by doing so, it will increase the demand for the power. It gives the impetus, give some incentives for the future investment to have some kind of the new input for this energy. And the second also is very important, enhance the electrification and the transformation for transportation industry. We should develop and introduce more electric vehicles, EVs. Now we have seen the trend, we see the momentum, but it is not enough. The EV car actually enjoyed very preferential policies in China. So we should give a boost to its phenomenon here in China. So I think Pakistan should also work in this way. And we have already introduced a few selected companies doing so. Still, I think the market, the share of the potential is very large. We should take this good advantage and opportunity. And third, also the electrification and electrification on the high energy consuming industries, such as the steel, the building materials, and the chemistry. So for all these kind of things we can do to do the demand side. And also another thing to add is to develop the circular economy. What does circular economy means? I would also bring back to the example as the coal-fired power plant. You know, the power plants not only produce the electricity, somehow it also have some, during the generation process, it also have some fly ashes, the gypsums, the high density salted water. All these things, if without use, purposely usage, they can be just termed as waste. But somehow, if we can develop the circular economy, we can make all these things being the materials to develop its potential as the raw materials for the building material, something like that. So it also enjoys huge potential. So this is from the supply and demand sides. But overall, we should just bring out some incentive as well as constraint policies. Incentive, that is to encourage the good things. Constraint, phase out the old things. So that's why I'm saying that we should phase out those old IPPs. And also to improve the national standards for energy efficiency and pollutant discharge. And in the future, perhaps we can also try to establish the carbon trading policy. The carbon trading, the system actually is already being matured in some European and also the North American countries. Yes. So it is also, yes, I think Pakistan should also take this kind of the advantage and the momentum to do so. So then before to end my remarks, I would also say some general picture or overview of the China's situation on the green energy part. Because when it comes to the term of the installed capacity, for hydropower part, China ranks the world #1. For solar power, ranks #1. For wind farm, ranks #1. For biomass, ranks #1. So this is China. So, and
you forgot to mention EVs.
EV, yeah, EVs. That is what you will add. Sorry, take up too much time. But when it also comes to the international market, China enjoys 70% of the global hydropower cooperation, 70%. Wind farm, we have 40% of the train industry. Solar, 70%. And also the green hydrogen. This is a new technology that will address the instability of the new energy. So this technology, China also is among the top, the rank. So these facts, hard facts I just illustrated, is only to serve the purpose that China is Pakistan's iron blood. And we already have the success of the CPEC energy part. We enjoy the most special, unique advantage that for these two countries to join and work hard together to increase Pakistan's economy and also to optimize the energy structure. So only by working hand in hand, I think Pakistan will enjoy a very prominent and promising future.
So yes, thank you so much. It has been wonderful. Thank you for taking us through the journey and what you actually predict the power sector plan of Pakistan to be, how it can actually transition as well. I think Mustafa Saab wants to Mustafa Saab, if you could also respond to some of the suggestions by Wang, and also if you could just highlight some of the things how you have actually worked with the Green CPEC Alliance for a long time, and we're also looking at how it can actually go towards the sustainable approach. As for the power sector, I think Muin Saab next will be highlighting them in detail, but if you can perhaps respond to Mr. Wang some of the suggestions and what you actually think. This is actually working. It's working.
Hello.
Yes, it's working.
Okay. Firstly, I think my brother, Mr. Wang, who's actually serving the second time in his diplomatic career in Pakistan. And I'm sure you can write it down that there'll be a third time as well. This is my prediction. And I can put money on it, RMB, not Pakistani currency. Firstly, it's a pleasure and honor to be here at SDPI. And I think it's a good opportunity to pat ourselves on the back of how far Pakistan China Institute, SDPI, and the Fudan University Center with Christoph, how far we've brought the greening CPEC discourse in the past 2 years that we initiated at the time of COVID. And it's a privilege to share this podium with Madam Ambassador, who has played a very important role, particularly during COVID in China. My brother, Mr. Wang Shengji, who is doing a great job in taking things forward. And my dear friend and brother, Mr. Hassan Daud, mentioned GDI. I want to congratulate Mr. Wang Shengji for actually making the first GDI parliamentarians group in any country. And that's in Pakistan. So congratulations to you for that. And Mr. Hassan Daud Bhatt, good friend, has played a very important role in CPEC and has been very consistent since 2013. But somehow he just keeps getting younger. That's something that I'll ask him later after the discussion.
20 years later, you're still 20 years.
Chinese wisdom.
I think that when we talk about, there have been a lot of important points that have been mentioned. But I think there's a prerequisite when we talk about renewable energy and just or adjust political will. And the political will being followed through with implementation. This is the most important thing. Because we are experts, we are apolitical people. We are giving our suggestions. But this needs to be taken forward with bold decision making. As Ambassador Nagmana said, one has to shake things up because we are predisposed in the developing world to fossil fuel projects. And I want to have the moral courage to admit that it was the government of Pakistan that asked China for coal-fired projects. It was not China. This is very important because when we talk about this, it's not either or, but sometimes some other countries point fingers on China. Oh, they have done this in certain country, they have done this in another country. The Belt and Road Corporation, and I've had the privilege, alhamdulillah, of being in the first two Belt and Road forums. And by the grace of God, I am invited to the third Belt and Road Forum in October as well, which is the apex decision-making body of the Belt and Road. So this is a mutual consultation, and the host country of the Belt and Road actually asks the Chinese government, the NDRC, that these are our priority items. And those priority items, you will attest to this, are given preference and deference by the National Development Reform Commission, and the companies are guided to go there. The government in 2013, at that time, made a decision based on different variables. One of the variables was we had an energy crisis. Coal-fired power plants were the fastest to be erected. And at that time, the solar energy was not as advanced. In 2013, it was also expensive. So Pakistan asked China that these are the projects that we want immediately. And that was done. So I think we have to be very clear on this very important point. Secondly, when we talk about the 2030 plan of Pakistan, of the state, that we will have 30% renewable energy in our generation from renewable. That is our plan officially. And then we have the IGSAP, which has been published by the NTDC in our power ministry. The framework is there. But I want to ask a question. What are we doing in practical terms for investors to scale up renewable energy and to make sure that 30% or even 10%, because we always talk of very big numbers and then we forget about it. So even 10% of renewable energy, will it be met by renewables by 2030? Do we have the policy or the tariff structure? Does NEPRA have the capacity to align its tariff structure with the new global needs of climate change? This is a question we need to ask. Because NEPRA is an autonomous body, that will get the tariff. Does it have the capacity and understanding and the priority to give attractive tariffs for renewable energy or not? And if it does not, how do we move towards that? This is a critical question. Is NEPRA's upcoming tariff determination for renewables aligned with Pakistan government's 2030 aim of 30% renewable generation out of the 100%? Have we asked ourselves this question? And who are the experts in NEPRA who will determine this tariff? And where are they? Are they part of this discourse? How much do they know about renewable energy? You see, these are difficult questions that we have to ask ourselves if we actually want to go beyond discussions. Otherwise, what the Chinese say is that in Pakistan, we come and we have the lovely photo with the president, and then we go to the Prime Minister's office. We are given a lot of respect and protocol, and very big commitments are made. But when we go back and there's a follow-up, then Ambassador and Mr. Wang and Hassan Dalsab know what happens.
That is why we are all smiling.
That is you see. So if we want people to take us seriously, investors to take us seriously, we have to walk the talk. Ask Shahjahan Mirza Sahab. He's a great expert and he's done a lot. But the Prime Minister, Shahbaz Sharif, he's transformed Punjab as Chief Minister. But when he announced this 10,000 megawatt solar, which was announced in Turkey, in China, every investor was said, please, Saudi Arabia, UAE. Do you know how many international bids were received for the 10,000 megawatts? That's how many? Zero. Zero. I think some Chinese companies maybe reluctantly submitted the bid. And I don't want to ask what happened to that project of 10,000 megawatts solar. You see, there is a big gap between our announcements, our policies, and the follow through and execution. That is the problem. And when we also talk about the IGSAP, it has a lot of information and data. But is the renewable projects truly reflected in the IGSAP? Like it's discussed as per our commitments at the COP? And what is the link of the IGSAP with the actual market situation in Pakistan? Is the IGSAP for the donors? How much is it in sync with the real market situation? So I'm posing these questions because I don't want to just come here and waste everyone's time that everything is fantastic, all is well, have some tea and samosas and then take a nap. Because then we'll just keep on going in circles. Also, as I said, when Christoph talked about that there are more financial opportunities, it's more lucrative, it's commercially lucrative to have renewable projects over fossil fuel. This is the thesis which has been asserted again and again. I propose that we need to demonstrate this to the business community. Because we are just sitting here, we are not spending any money. No one will spend money till it is demonstrated. How is it more lucrative? And I propose that we can, because we've initiated this project, Pakistan China Institute, SDPI, and Fudan, that we should identify a case study, a pilot project, small pilot project of transition, where we see how a fossil fuel project can be transitioned to a renewable project. And what are the financial opportunities that are created and compare them? Is it better in terms of profitability from an investor's perspective or lack thereof? And based on that data, then it can be replicated. We need to identify a pilot project and we do a study on that pilot project. This is my proposal. And if that pilot project has the data that speaks more volumes than a fossil fuel project's data, then we should move forward. Because when we talk about, Mr. Wang was talking about waste to energy. I think it's a very important aspect. We have waste management companies in every big city, but their delivery has not really been up to the mark. And they also have a mandate to do waste to energy projects, but they have not been able to do this. Waste to energy. So Karachi, yeah, Turkish, yes. So why have they not been able to do it? I think waste to energy, China has a lot of experience, but our waste disposal mechanism, waste collection mechanism is not there on the ground. It's an informal waste collection mechanism through hawkers. We don't have the waste collection mechanism on the ground. So I think that needs to be created in order to have waste to energy. We have landfills which are not managed. Those are eco disasters.
Yes.
If you go 1 kilometer from any hospital, you will see an environmental disaster taking place. All the environmental waste, there's no mechanism to dispose environmental waste. It's very serious. When I was growing up, Rawal Dam used to have a lot of fish. Now you don't even want to go near it. So this is the situation on the ground. I think when we talk about the SIFC, which was, I think, a very good initiative by the military and civilian leaders. I think this has to be prioritized. The just or adjust. It has to be prioritized. And because SIFC has been created to cut through the red tape, that's the main purpose of this vehicle. And I think that political will has to come from the top, because this is policy. Then it will follow through. And furthermore, I want to also say that because Mr. Hassan Daud Bhatt is an incorrigible optimist, as am I, but he said that the many companies are going to be coming here and they will be investing a lot in Pakistan in renewable. I really hope you are right. Maybe you know something I don't. But let me tell you, we are not the only game in town. Okay. We are not the only game in town. This is a very competitive world. Very competitive world. And first phase of CPEC, okay, because we are very close political relationship with China. Investors came here. But what are our indicators? Look at what happened in Gwadar again. What happened in Gwadar just now?
2 days ago.
2 days ago. There was the attack on a Chinese convoy. And we are saying we want Gwadar to be another Hong Kong, another Dubai. And would any one of you go from here to Gwadar to make a factory? You went for sightseeing and then you came. But you can't go to get it. But my point is, we need to get real. Wake up and smell the coffee or chai, since it's Pakistan. Because the world is moving very fast. Okay. Bangladesh is 6% growth. Forget faraway countries. Let's look around our neighborhood. India is far ahead of us. On their last Independence Day, they unveiled their own EV vehicle.
Yes.
Okay. While we were attacking each other here, they unveiled their own EV vehicle. So we need to go beyond rhetoric, beyond, giving big, flowery language, higher than the mountains, deeper than the sea, beyond that. Are we able to honor the commitments? Are we able to make sure that there are no terrorist attacks on the Chinese? Are we able to give those incentives in our industrial zones, which can actually relocate Chinese industry? Or are those industrial zones just for PPPs that we have this many industrial zones? So these are certain questions that I want to deal with. And let me tell you, finally, that I'm not discouraging anything.
Yes.
But what I'm saying is that if we are going to move forward, we need to up our game.
Yes.
Only then we'll be able to move forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Hassan. Very extremely rightly pointed out. I think, but just to bring things back on the context of just energy transition partnerships a bit more, I think perhaps Moin Saab will be coming to you. If I could also request the MIS team to display slides that are actually forward. Yes, just yes. We'll be actually providing her a good platform and all the debate on the just, and then she'll also conclude and respond to the questions. Moin Saab, if you could also highlight some of the challenges which you actually think are there in the power sector, and do you actually think of this just energy transition partnership context, and how does these challenges could be addressed actually using them as one of the very key and important tools? Yes, over to you, Moin Saab.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi. Mr. Mustafa has posed many questions. Mr. Wang has also given very good recommendations. Actually, I'm working in the economic planning and policy for last 20 years now. I worked as advisor to Saudi King Abdullah and then King Salman also. Recently, I've been working with the Prime Minister of Pakistan's office, and energy landscape of Pakistan is on the palm of my hand. So I can respond to every single question that you pose
and I can tell the reasons that you are absolutely right, but that's not going to happen. And what are the reasons behind it? But we are not going to go in that direction. And very pertinently, you also said that there must be some investor. And currently, actually, today I'm representing the investors because now I'm the CEO of one of the largest fund in Pakistan. We actually own many common households brands, starting from this tissue paper to the car that most of you would have driven here, to even many power plants, including Angro Kadirpur, Nishat Power, and Kotadu Power. And Kotadu Power is that one infamous, which is not being retired despite being on FO, that is fuel oil. I'll explain that what's the reason, but what are the restrictions that why government is unable to do that. So my job will be mostly to the challenges that we have in the power sector. And then through a case study, I'll explain that how we can address those challenges, while Dr. Khalid will explain more about the CPAC specific related issues and CPAC power generation issues. But my discussion would be restricted more towards the challenges that we have currently. Next slide. So the biggest problem that we have is misalignment of risk and reward. If you look at the power cost structure, over here we have everything, and we end up to average tariff, which is around 30 rupees per kilowatt hour in Pakistan. Out of that 30 rupees, around 22 rupees is the cost of generation, And capacity purchase price is actually 15. Just 2 years ago, that capacity purchase price used to be 7.5 rupees per kilowatt hour, and energy purchase price used to be 6.5 kilowatt hour. Now, actually, in dollar terms, our energy purchase price, thanks to CPAC third coal projects, our energy purchase price has decreased slightly, but our capacity purchase price has more than doubled. So from 7.5, it is a bit more than 15. The distribution margins in that 29-30 rupees, they are only 3.1 rupee. So now where are the misalignment of risks and rewards? As you can see, that 22 rupees in the power price, they are spent on generation, which is 73%, and this is tax-free money. We are not levying any taxes on the power generation. So it's good for me as an investor. That's great. But is it good for the country? I'm not sure about it. I'll explain it a bit further. So now 73% of the money goes to the generation sector. But what are the generation risks? Despite being an investor myself, I was unable to find any risk except that CPPAG will delay some of the payments. Apart from that, I couldn't think of any risk owning the power generation. Actually, we own the Capco, which is like old obsolete technology, but still it's working, and we will have to continue it working. Actually, before moving on, let me give you a brief snapshot of Pakistan's energy landscape, the history of it. We used to have one big organization, vertically integrated in the sense that they engaged all the way from constructing the dams and then producing power from those dams and then transmitting power and then distributing power. And the name of that entity used to be WAPDA, Water and Power Development Authority. It's still there, but now it's restricted only to building dams. So from that vertical integrated organizations, one organization, we actually carved out dozens and dozens of organizations. We have dozens in the generation sector. We have around 8-9 in the distribution. We have one in transmission, that is National Transmission and Dispatch Company. And we have actually one whole organization just to write checks for all these multiple stakeholders. So since the demise of PAPDA, in that particular context, Pakistan's power landscape has always been a problem. And actually, let me allow to say that our economy was held hostage to power for more than a decade. Because we have blackouts, and most of the time, the power prices are increasing far higher than the inflation rate. But it has happened last year, and it's going to happen again. So what are the reasons behind it? The main reason that I would say that the generation reward is 73%, but the generation risk is almost negligible. Even that CPPAG payment is guaranteed by the government of Pakistan, not directly, but indirectly. But the distribution reward is only 3 rupees out of that 29.73. But distribution risks, I'll have to keep on counting and counting. So distribution losses, these guys have to bear, apart from that 11.73%, which NEPRA allows. So these companies have to bear the risk of that distribution loss. They have to bear the risk of power theft. They have to bear the risk of non-recovery, and non-recovery is very high. And some of the distribution companies like Quetta Electric Supply Company, Tribal Area Electric Supply Company, even Peshawar Electric Supply Company. And then they are collecting sales tax on this electricity, even when there is no recovery. So they still have to pay that sales tax. And part of that sales tax is also goes into the circular debt. And if you have to get refund from FBR, then again, it's a months-long process. And apart from that, these distribution companies, we call them DISCOs, they are also the tax collection and levy agents, tax and levy collection agents for government of Pakistan. So they are collecting multiple types of taxes, electricity duties and levies and TV fee and now radio fee on behalf of the government. So all of these are the risks related to distribution, but their reward is only 10%. No risk for the generation, their reward is 73%. Okay. So this is one problem. So we have to align the risk and reward. How we are going to do it, we'll discuss it further in the case study. So the next problem is the capacity payment. Capacity purchase price is more than 50% of the cost of the power. And this is one big number. And as I told you that in last 2 years, it has actually doubled. So what happens every time when some of the Chinese head of state is coming here or Pakistani head of state is going there? So the big problem is the payments of these CPEC power generation companies. They are doing great work, but it is because of the misalignment of our policies that CPPAG has to delay their payments because they are not getting payments from these distribution companies, and distribution companies are not getting payment from the consumers. So what happens? So we actually start increasing the tariff, and that vicious cycle continues. The more tariff, the higher the tariff, the more non-recovery is going to happen. So probably that's not the solution. The only solution was and is the efficient generation companies and low-cost power generation. Okay, so why actually in last 2 years the capacity payments have doubled? One of the reason is that our generation has significantly increased, 7,000-8,000 megawatts. In actually, if we call about 2 years, it's more than that, but 7,000-8,000 megawatts capacity has increased. So whenever a new plant comes in, its capacity payment is far higher than an old plant. Of course, its energy payment, energy purchase price is lower than that because they are more efficient. So as I told you, that all the time when Pakistani heads of states are going to China or Chinese are coming here, so one big problem which is actually tarnishing our brotherly relationship with China are the payments of these generation companies. So it's high time that we decide that what is actually the efficient power generation capacity, or what should be the efficient power generation capacity of our national grid. It depends on a lot many factors, but just to give you a rough idea, as Mr. Wang has said that probably we need to increase our capacity more. Actually, I would vehemently disagree with it, because if we, for example, I'll explain it a bit further in the case study, but if you look at even the Chinese power sector landscape, their average demand is around 0.9 terawatt hours, and their capacity is 2.2 terawatt hours. So it is around 1.4% higher, means a bit more than double. So the if we use that Chinese benchmark, our capacity should be somewhere around 36,000 megawatts, while currently we are close to 45,000 megawatts. So we are sitting on an additional capacity of at least 10,000 megawatts. So now there is a premise that if the GDP increases, so we will need that power generation. So, but this is the very reason that high power demand, that GDP is unable to, the high power prices, that GDP is unable to decrease. And actually in last year, our power generation dwindled by 10%. It didn't increase, it actually decreased. So it's very important that today we decide that what is the power generation capacity. And as far as Mr. Mustafa's question, that what is IGCEP and why it does not reflect the clean energy. Actually, I have been part of that whole process. When IGCEP was being formulated, you should consider it not as an energy sector plan, but it is just a portfolio of multiple projects which are thrusted upon by the power division, to the power division actually, by the government of Pakistan. So now we have already committed those projects. So they make up to IGCEP, irrespective that whether they are low cost, whether they make sense or they don't make sense, but we are going to go ahead with them. So that's what IGCEP is. So we should not be very optimistic about the IGCEP as well, as far as the current IGCEP and the last IGCEP is concerned. As we move on, inshallah, things will improve as far as IGCEP is also concerned. So capacity payment is the next issue, and over here it's very important that we decide that what should be our capacity, but because all the time we keep on increasing our capacity blindly almost. So one more important thing is lack of holistic energy planning. So actually it's very to some of you, it may be very surprising that because we have to have efficient oil fields, so that is why we are having inefficient power generation. What's happening actually? Our refineries, and over here I'll also come to Mr. Wang's question and Mr. Mustafa's question, that why those old capcos are not being retired. So what is happening? Our refineries are producing around 35 to 40%, depending on the refinery, but average is 35 to 40% FO. That is fuel oil. And FO does not have a ready demand in the international market, neither it has a lot of demand in Pakistani market, except power generation. So when the storage capacity of a refinery fills to the brim, what is the option now? The option is to stop the refinery or sell FO. We cannot stop the refinery, because if we stop the refinery, we'll have to stop the production in the oil field, because we do not have a very good and a reliable value chain to get our oil refined from some other country. So in order to have the efficient oil fields, we have to keep our inefficient refineries running. And in order to keep our inefficient refineries running, it's very important that our inefficient power generation keeps on moving, despite the fact that it is more than 50 rupees per kilowatt hour, almost double than our average energy price. But we have to maintain Capco and all those companies in order to cross-subsidize the refinery sector. Not a good idea, but that's the reality. So those old GenCos, they also have a reason in our power sector or the energy sector landscape. The next question is cost-benefit analysis of renewable energy. Now, I totally agree with Mr. Wang that coal is not going anywhere, because over here, we must understand the supply and demand dynamics of the power sector. There are two types of capacities. One is intermittent capacity, that is renewable, hydel, etc. You call it clean energy. The other is continuous capacity, that is thermal. Now, it's highly unlikely that you replace the continuous capacity with the intermittent capacity, that is renewable energy. So that is one reason we have to have our base load capacity. So the RE is unable to serve the base load demand. So that is why we have to have some thermal capacity, even if we have one of the most efficient transmission and distribution network, which we don't have, of course. So we cannot switch all the way, or rather I can say that we cannot switch even 1 kilowatt hour of thermal energy to renewable energy. So we have to live with the thermal energy, and we'll keep adding the additional renewable energy, as Mr. Wang has very rightly said. That's the way forward, actually. So renewable energy, and one more important myth that I want to bust. Renewable energy is not, as we speak, it is not the cheapest form of energy. And most of the time, it is actually higher than our average power tariff. It means that the renewable energy will pull the prices of the power upwards. They will not pull it downwards. Most of the people think otherwise. While coal, especially third coal, its price is much lower. Almost half of our basket price, which is around 22, 23 rupees. So it's very important that we do cost-benefit analysis of renewable energy. And there are multiple other factors, because all the renewable energy is must-run conditions. So when we say must-run, then we have to use that energy whenever it is being produced. So we have to close down the thermal power plants, even though they must be offering us much cheaper prices, but we have to close it down, and we'll have to draw the high-priced power generation. So the next question in holistic energy planning, we all know that our capacity payments are very high, and we are still adding to that capacity payment in terms of the net metering also. Is it a good idea? Probably not. And actually, let me tell you that USA has cancelled net metering, apart from those people who had already been given this net metering, because some of the affluent people are gaining at the cost of an average consumer and at the cost of state. Is it a good idea? In our power sector landscape, net metering isn't a good idea, and we should rethink, and we should do the cost benefit analysis of net metering as well.
So just in the interest of time, if you could just
last slide. So actually, I have, for the case study, I have chosen Pacific Corporation. That is a very well-run American utility, electric utility, and it is owned by Berkshire Hathaway. And Berkshire Hathaway is managed by the legendary investor, Mr. Warren Buffett. So financially, looking at this company will address a lot of challenges that how they are operating. So their net capacity is 14,314 megawatt, almost equal to demand of Pakistan. Pakistan's demand, average demand is exactly the same. Average demand of this company is 8,000 megawatt. It actually is less than double. So if we look at that benchmark, according to Chinese benchmark, my capacity should be 35,000. according to this American standard, my capacity should be actually 26,000 megawatt. So, and this is fully vertical integrated company, just like our good old WAPDA. They are doing coal mining, they are doing generation, they are doing transmission, and they are doing distribution. And that is how they align their risk and reward. As you have seen that over there, we were giving all the risks to the distribution sector, but the reward was only 10%. So in order to align the risk and reward, so it is a fully vertically integrated company. And if you look at their fleet, coal is 56%, natural gas is 26%, 24%. So 80% is thermal, 10% hydel, and 10% RE. So that's it.
Thank you. I think before just coming to the concluding and final remarks from our honorable investor, Rahmana Hashmi, I think I'll just quickly ask Dr. Khalid to very quickly summarize his recommendations and suggestions on Chinese, the prospects of China-Pakistan Just Energy Transition Partnerships, and then we'll come to Mr. Khanai. So if I could just request my esteemed to share the slides.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, excellencies, Mr. Wang, Madam Mustafa Sir. So I would bring back this debate towards Just Energy Transition Partnerships under the banner of PPAC or China-Pakistan Strategic Cooperation. Next slide, please. According to the National Energy Agency, energy security is defined as uninterrupted availability of energy sources, but there is some sort of long-term energy security as well, which mainly deals with timely investments, which Mr. Wang called as just decisions to supply energy in line with economic developments and environmental needs. Then there is a phenomenon of vicious circle of energy poverty, which indicates that unsustainable energy choices causes low productivity. That low productivity is followed by economic growth, low economic growth, and then low financing, and then this circle continues. What JETPs are Just Energy Transition Partnerships do, they provide a financing cooperation mechanism that aims of which are help selection heavily coal-dependent emerging economy so that they can finance their energy transition in a just and equitable energy transition pattern. There are some targets. Mustafa Saab mentioned that there is IGSAP, there is ARE policy 2019, then the NDCs. There are so many targets which we want to achieve, we are pursuing, but we need to acknowledge the elephants in the room, and those elephants are energy economics, climate financing, energy finance, how we are going to finance these targets. I mean, we need $50 billion by 2030 and $80 billion by 2040 to pursue these targets. We need to have investments of like $20 billion in our transmission system. $30 billion are needed for coal phase out. So we need to have this innovative sort of approach where we can have this just energy transition part. So what I am going to request is that we convert the China-Pakistan strategic partnership into Just Energy Partnership, Just Energy Transition Partnership, because China is very generous that they are giving us macroeconomic stability loans and in the form of other financial assistance. We can convert this into Just Energy Transition Partnership. And what is Just Energy Transition Partnership? It is based on 8 core principles. It is guided by science. It caters for rights and equitable energy transition, sustainable and ambitious, consistent, comprehensive and transparent. It calls for multi-stakeholder involvement. It is centered on just climate justice. It recognizes energy access as human right. Lastly, it ensures that access to justice in decision-making and policy formulation and information purposes. So what is Just Energy Transition Partnership in COP26 Glasgow? 7 countries plus Norway and Denmark, they pledged that they would be providing multilateral financial support for energy transition. This involves public sector, which is International Partnership Group of G7 plus Norway and Denmark, and then their private sector in terms of GFANS, that is Glasgow Financial Alliance for Net Zero. This is the structure of JETPs that is implemented in South Africa. South Africa has planned for $80 billion USD under JETPs. out of which 8 billion USD has been realized. This is the holistic startup plan, which involves interministerial cooperation and international partner group and their partners. In terms of Vietnam, they planned for 15 billion USD JETP, in which 7.5 billion is to be generated from public sector, and rest of the 7.5 billion is to be generated from private sector. That was prepared in 2022 in collaboration with G7 countries plus Denmark and Norway. That was a non-binding agreement to mobilize this 15.5 billion USDs. They made up a resource mobilization plan, which Pakistan needs to do. We need to put our house in order so that we can generate this sort of JETPs tailored under CPEC, our strategic cooperation of Pakistan and China. There is a SWOT analysis. Strengths include that Pakistan has enormous renewable energy potential. Weakness means that we have technological gap. We need to import. We are dependent on imported fuels. Threats that we have limited financing, political instability, security issues, power grid issues, low return on coal and IPPs projects. What is the opportunities? Opportunities lie in CPEC, because under CPEC, we have financial agreements, we have energy-related agreements, so we can transform this CPEC investments into JETPs or just transition partnerships. What are different recommendations? First one is that we need to put our house in order. To do that, we need to have interministerial collaboration, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Ministry of Energy, Ministry of Climate Change, banking sector, private sector, academia, CPEC authority. They need to collaborate more so that we can have this integrated approach. Next recommendation is that we need to have integrated and indicative energy planning. Most of us have rightly mentioned that our IGSAP, it is just an indicative power expansion plan. It is not even a plan. It is just an indication that we are going to do this. These power plants are in pipeline. We need to have this integrated energy expansion plan, which is not just solely focused on power, but all the energy sector. We need to have energy forecasting based on ground level data. We need to have models which explain energy economics and financing, incorporating micro and macro level data. Next recommendation is that we integrate climate change. We integrate sustainable energy into macroeconomic policy making. Modern political economy, macroeconomy is now based on climate change, not on the rhetoric. Integrate climate sustainability into long-term profit functions and macroeconomic accounting. Green growth and green development through partnerships and collaborations. Lastly, recommendation is that we need to have this CPEC and JETPs alliance. Financial institutions of Pakistan and China, we need to have this framework so that we can incorporate this tailored sort of just energy transition partnership under CPEC. CPEC authority can play a fundamental role by collaborating all the ministries from Pakistan and China. So thank you so much.
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Khalid. This was extremely insightful. So I think just to give a brief, we have discussed what are the prospects if we can go for an early retirement of coal power projects under CPEC. We have seen how what are major challenges in the power sector. So coming towards our honorable investor, Nakmana Hashmi, ma'am, you have listened to most of the debate. We have heard from the investors, the CSO, some of the Chinese experts, as well as the honorable embassy of the People's Republic of China. How do you see, I mean, what are your initial thoughts on the whole topic, and how do you see we actually going forward ahead with it? And thank you so much. Just over to you, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you very much. To begin with, Assalamu alaikum and good afternoon and ni hao to all our Chinese friends. And actually, as I had said in the beginning, when I came here, that I'm no energy expert at all. So it is quite intimidating to speak in front of people who have spent their lives in this sector. But like my very dear friend, Mr. Wong, because I was asked to come and speak here, I had also spent some time yesterday trying to understand exactly, what things are from various points of view. But because I was to speak in the beginning. Now I'm speaking at the end. So a lot of the points that I had, jotted down have already been covered, particularly by Mustafa and by Mr. Wong here. So I'm going to leave my notes there and just want to, and because of paucity of time, just point out a few things. So I will actually start from the figures that one of the speakers had given, which is that our household consumption is 50% and our industry is 30%, and then agriculture is 20%. Now, this actually identifies the very basic problem that our country is facing, which is the wrong structure of our economy. So in order to, so there's a lot of talk about reforming the economy. Now, how do you reform the economy? By actually inverting this the other way around. Because in any country, the industry gets the most. And if you look at Pakistan, considering we are an agricultural country and 70% of our population is still living in rural areas, the second consumer should be our agriculture and our rural areas. And we see that there's nothing there because there's no transmission lines, there's no, and in areas where there is electricity, there's 18 hours of load shedding. So all your energy is going to some of the big cities or some of the small towns, and most of it is non-productive then. So you are cutting down on your industry and providing your elite population with energy. So you're basically wasting it. And that is why your economy doesn't grow, because your economy depends on your export. If you look at your export basket, it is only 10 products, 7 of which are based on cotton, and the rest is rice and mangoes or whatever. But your basic basket consists of textile. So if your cotton is not growing, if you don't have provide energy and technologically advanced equipment to your rural areas, then how are you going to increase your exports? How are you going to increase your foreign exchange? And how are you going to pay for all these things? So basically, we need to invert our economic structure and reform it in order. Second thing related to this that I wanted to say was political commitment. Political commitment is all right. There is a lot of people our leaders come and they make big commitments for energy, or our politics in the last 20 years or so has been, going around energy. But unfortunately, and that is where I disagree, that only the ministries should get together, because this is not the work of diplomats and bureaucrats. This is the work of experts like Mr. Muin Abbas here and other people. So we need to involve the experts more than the diplomats or the bureaucrats, because somebody serving as a commissioner in some, a small area cannot become an energy expert and become your chief expert for energy. So we need to connect more to the experts, try and understand. And because of that, our understanding on a lot of issues, including energy, is not clear. Still, I think the bureaucrats have a slightly better understanding. The political leadership doesn't have the understanding. So if you really do not have the understanding of a certain issue and the criticality of that issue for your own development, and the criticality of the issue, in the world and how people are doing it, then you cannot have that commitment that comes from inside. And without, as Mustafa also said, without that political commitment, things don't work. They will never work. So we need to look at these figures in those terms. Now, yesterday, I came across a very interesting tweet. Now, you're the experts, so to me, it doesn't seem quite correct, but it was shocking, that tweet. That tweet said that India produces, the tariffs for per unit or whatever, I'm not a technical person, was 1 point something Indian rupees. Bangladesh was 2 point something Indian rupees, and Pakistan was 54. Now, this is very shocking. I don't know. It couldn't, I thought it wasn't correct, but it is what the tweet wanted to convey, perhaps, was that it's substantially more than the tariffs in the region. So if that is the case, then how do you compete when your basic exports are only based on textiles and other things, and you're not looking after your urban areas at all? So there is a problem, which means there is a problem at the basic strategic thinking level. So unless that is corrected and that understanding is reached, there's nothing that you can really do about it. As far as the Chinese projects are concerned, as Mustafa said, we were the ones who told the Chinese that our top priority in CPAP, the first phase is, of course, energy and infrastructure. So they provided us with energy and infrastructure. The agreements were also signed on the basis of what we told them, the existing PPPs, and we signed the agreements. So there's no point in finger pointing towards the Chinese. And at that time, the understanding was that the Chinese are going to build these projects, but the link lines, the smart metering, the control of theft would be done by us. And nothing was done actually in that direction, because smart metering was to be done by one of our Western friends who never, honored their commitments. We never had the money. Now, again, I think there's some, I'm now retired, but there's some movement that they may give us some money for smart metering and other things. And there lies the problem of installed capacity and used capacity. Because you don't have link lines, your rural areas are not connected. So we are paying extra money for installed capacity without our ability to actually, that is why we have installed capacity and actual capacity problem. I'm not an expert, but this is what I understand. So unless you have that political commitment and understanding on what is wrong where, and instead of making political decisions, make informed technical decisions, then you can go towards resolving the problem. Now, as far as renewable and coal is concerned, I agree that coal is going to be around for a long time, and with the passage of time, the energy, the technology will increase and everything. But how many coal reserves do we have? We are importing coal from Australia to produce electricity. I have a very different view on Thercoal. I've worked on it for 20 years because I've served in China twice. And Thercoal was one of the projects that I had way back in the early 2000s. And people don't know that the Chinese pulled out of that project. The Chinese paid for the feasibilistic study hundreds of millions, and they gave that hundred of millions to us and walked out. Why did they walk out? Because the coal has too much sulfur and too much water, and therefore the cost of producing energy from there was much more. So they had come up with a very, very good proposal. And the proposal was that let us put a small power project there. So, the Thar area gets a little bit of electricity that they need. And for the rest of Thercoal, let's liquefy it and let's produce synthetic urea. We import billions of dollars of urea every year. So if we had gone and accepted that proposal at that time and converted it into gasification and then producing urea, we would have saved billions on our imports and would have produced more than enough for Pakistan and even able to export urea. So sometimes for political, I don't want to go into what the politics of it was, because this is not the, the venue for doing that. But this is what I mean. You have to make decisions for the country not based on politics. You have to make the decision based on serious understanding of what is required. And without that serious understanding of the whole thing, this issue is not really going away anytime soon. A lot of things that I wanted to say have, of course, already been said, so I really don't want to go into that. But my recommendation would be, like Mustafa had also said, you have also just pointed out, there has to be a long-term strategic plan for all the sectors. Your critical sector is energy. There has to be a long-term plan, strategic plan, with total understanding and involvement of experts, and not just by the bureaucrats sitting in the Ministry of Energy. It doesn't work that way. And then we have a lot of plans. We don't implement the first 5 years, 2 5-year plans we implemented, and we all know where we were by implementing them. Nowadays, we don't implement those plans. So with that plan should be a detailed sort of document that puts deadlines, timelines on how that plan would be achieved, and give in detail all the aspects of how that would be achieved, and a monitoring mechanism that would ensure that this is done. Because our plans are fantastic, but we go nowhere with those plans. And without energy, as far as your renewables are concerned, so that was for coal, as far as your renewables are concerned, yes, renewables will never, ever, in a country like Pakistan, make the majority portion of the energy that you will provide to the country. But then look at the examples. Look at Bangladesh. What have they done with the solar energy? They distributed one panel, that would light one bulb, and use one fan, and they gave it everywhere. Chinese, our brothers here, distributed 20,000 units of these standalone things in Balochistan when the floods and all came. Because that is how you will take the people out of poverty. That is how you will give them education. Look at Tibet, look at Xinjiang. These are areas like Balochistan, very large, very difficult to access, very small populations. How did they do it? Standalone solar units. So why can't we do that? Yes, not for the entire country, but why can't we have a plan to do that? Now, by just, I also mean, because right now you are providing energy only to your elite. By just is equal distribution also, to everybody, so giving them, your entire country, a chance to come out of poverty and contribute in a meaningful way to your economy. Otherwise, it is of no use to us to produce this. Last night I was reading this World Bank report where it said, and I was quite shocked, that if Pakistan was only to use 0.07% of its area for solar production, for which it has the climate and everything to do it, a lot of their majority of their energy problems would be resolved. Again, another thing where I would like to give examples again of Bangladesh and particularly of India. I mean, we may not like them, but there are some things that they do well. Biogas. Now, everywhere, I was, reading about the big cities they have overwhelming number of these biogas standalone systems in people's houses, in apartment complexes, in the rural areas, where they can run their tube wells, they can run a couple of lamps and a couple of fans, and they are operational. So, and they can improve their agriculture. Now that doesn't require rocket science, biogas. Why are we waiting for investors to come from abroad and bring their technology and bring their knowledge and expertise? You can do it yourself. And that is because we are not investing in engineering. All our engineers go abroad, all our doctors go abroad. So these are issues that need to be tackled. Energy issue is not an issue that stands alone. It is your overall thinking and policy and planning, and where do you want to see the country go? So you have the possibility, yes, I agree, we don't have too many wind corridors because it's a very technical thing, but we have a wind corridor in Balochistan, we have a wind corridor on our south, on the coastal area, and 1 or 2, I think, in northern area. we can utilize them. We're not even utilizing them. Tidal is very expensive, but we do have the capacity of 1,000 kilometers of, sea coast where we can even, but we are really, the bottom line is we are not working ourselves. We are not creative enough. We want the Chinese to come and do it. We want the Westerns to come and do it. We don't want to make encourage our own people to even produce a needle. It is not going to work that way in any sector, let alone in energy sector. We are going to continue producing coal in the hope that one day the Chinese will develop this, technology which is smart enough to not pollute the environment. Karot hydropower project is the cleanest, and that is Chinese technology, state-of-the-art Chinese technology that they have employed. And hopefully the same will be done for Dhyani Bhasha and others. So that is why it's called the Green Project and one of the 5 big projects. But for how long are we just going to wait for other people to do it? We have to tighten our belt and do it ourselves as well. But first and foremost, clear understanding of where the country is and where it needs to go at the political level, and absolute commitment. Otherwise, nothing is going anywhere. Otherwise, we'll continue to make show knee-jerk reactions and make ad hoc arrangements for things. And we'll keep crying like this. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Thank you so much. So I think with this, we have, the floor is open for any suggestions, comments, and if you want to add something to it, please.
I do want to say something.
Yes.
Okay,
please.
I have 3 questions.
Yes.
First of all, I am not from embassy. My salary is from HEC, Higher Education Commission. And my position also from HEC. So you consider me as Pakistan.
Absolutely.
3 questions.
All Chinese are Pakistanis for us, don't worry.
May Pakistan se pyar karte.
MashaAllah, very good.
First of all, any of you sitting in this office import one vehicle, electricity vehicle into Pakistan. Did any of you have this experience?
Mr. Hassan Dawood has an electric vehicle from MD. Oh, it's too expensive. I can't afford it. I was government. So
do you know how much is
although I did the agreement for them.
SUV price?
I went twice to Shanghai.
What's the price in China? I have a software over here. One is Taobao, one is Pinduoduo. I can show you the price directly. And do you know how much is the price for a SUV shape e-vehicle in China by Pinduoduo, which means delivery to your home? How much is that? It's less than 500,000 Pakistan rupee.
Yeah.
Did any of you bring investment directly for solar panel in Pakistan market? I have done all of this. My e-vehicle right now, 23 pieces, still in Karachi, and it has been 1.5 years. And it's not possible for me to get it. Due to in Pakistan, there's no policy how much percent complete called a complete car and how much percent in components called you're importing components. There's no such a standard. Without standard, what I'm importing depends on what they say. Right now, I just met Hongshan Fund boss, and I just talked with the Zhongjin boss as well. We got $500 million, and we want to do 2 projects over here, and I give my paper to SIFC. My dear gentlemen and ladies, my dear ladies and gentlemen, do you know in this world, we already done in 3 countries, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and Vietnam, all successful. We invested $3 crore in Vietnam, and now every year it's 5 billion wholesaling number value. You can come and visit my factory, and we just signed with Saudi Arabia. But for Pakistan, do you know any third country, when they value your mortgage, your land, the money is not from your pocket. The money is from China Construction Silk Road Fund. But when they value your real estate, Do you know the policy? My dear friends, do you know in Ningbo city, what is the exporting and importing for solar panel? Do you know in Suzhou city, it's different with Ningbo? Do you know if you import from Guangzhou, it's different policy with Ningbo? When we do our STG, our STZ, we never considered about China policy. China Guangzhou policy is different from China Suzhou policy, and it's obvious on the website. My dear gentlemen, I'm a Chinese. My conversation is really short. Just one suggestion. Please, let's do the work. When we do the work, let us study what China policy is.
No, this is
So-
very rightly.
I totally share your frustration because I've served twice in China and I know what you're talking about. I've faced it every day. So
Perhaps if Dr. Faisal, if you'd like to add anything to this.
Thank you. It was enlightening talks by many of our colleagues and Mr. Saiba. I think we have a lot of problems in our systems, but the major problem was due to the timing of our capacity addition. This was a major problem, which unfolds a lot of problems. Because when we put a lot of generation capacity at a time and then we have to pay back the generation, the capacity charges, they disturb our fiscal problems. And secondly, and this problem arises because of the forecasting capacity. We can't forecast timely and accurately what is the demand.
Doctor, well, slightly disagree. It's not about forecasting. We know what's demand. Actually, I can tell you right now. But the thing is, there are billions at stake in the power sector, in the power generation.
I will say just one thing. Okay. If we see the medium-term development framework in 2005, and we check the document, it would mention that in 2015, for example, this would be the demand of electricity, and we haven't reached it today. So this is the accuracy of our demand forecast. And later on, many other documents also have take us to 70 gigawatt and so and so forth. So and another thing is the accuracy of the data availability. For example, we don't know how much private solar capacity is there. How many houses have installed solar panels. So this kind of anomalies have created a lot of generation capacity. And another aspect is the retirement of many plants. Some of the plants are 50 years old. And since they are in government sector, we are not retiring them because people have stakes in them. They have big houses, big financial rewards they are getting. So we are not retiring many of the GENCOs, although they are not producing even for 5% of their capacity, one thing. And secondly, they are highly inefficient, I think around 10%.
that's what I said, not political decisions, but sensible decisions made. Yeah.
So if you have any other comments or any questions for I think yes, we're already have run almost 30 minutes beyond the normal time. So again, thank you all for joining us today, and we'll be actually developing a whole report based on today's consultation, and we'll be shortly forwarding you the initial draft within 2 weeks of time. So with this, I formally thank you all for joining us today, and yes, thank you so much. Thank you.
Please to transcribe.
No, not